Today our story together is the story of Ferran Tomic, known as a Spider-Man but in theft. This man is very smart and different in theft, but we must know who Ferran Tomic is. Hello, I am Michael and I am back today with a new video. Before we start, do not forget to like and subscribe. Our story begins in 1968. We want to know how Ferran's personality was formed in his difficult life that affected him psychologically. In 1968, Ferran was born in France. He is of Croatian origin, but his parents moved from Croatia and settled in France, and their son Ferran was born there. When he was about a year old, his mother was involved in a car accident, which made her suffer from illnesses and pains, and thus she was unable to take care of him. His father struggled to make a living, and even that food was not available in abundance, so they had to send Ferran to his uncles and aunts in Bosnia to take care of him. He remained under the care of his relatives until he was 8 years old. Due to their poor living conditions, Ferran suffered from a lack of food and drink, and from the age of 8 he turned into a thief, stealing anything to survive. He continued in this way until he was 11 years old. Ferran decided to return to his parents in Paris in the hope that his condition would improve, but the reality was worse than he expected. His parents were always fighting, and his father would vent his anger on him, which made him grow up without feelings and prefer isolation. This situation continued until Ferran reached his 20s, so he decided to rely on himself and not wait for help from anyone. At that time, Paris was known as a paradise for thieves, so he began to learn the art of theft and develop his skills. At first he was stealing car radios because they were sold at a good price at the time, but he joined the army. He turned into a monster in every sense of the word. He was 2 meters tall and weighed more than 100 kilos, and he trained intensively until he became very strong. After his service ended, he returned to his civilian life and continued his work in the field of theft. Ferran began to roam the upscale neighborhoods of Paris, especially on the Avenue Foch, where the luxurious houses were. He noticed that the protection on the windows and doors decreases the higher we go, so he decided to target the upper floors. He would climb the buildings without any safety rope, sneak into the upper apartments, and steal valuables. After climbing to the roof he jumped from building to building, carrying out his thefts with intelligence and precision. Ferran continued to rob houses until the late 1990s, but people started keeping their belongings in bank safe deposit boxes. Ferran thought of changing his strategy and decided to steal paintings. The paintings were light and expensive, and he succeeded in stealing 3 paintings from a museum in Paris. After the theft, Ferran was arrested, but when his sentence ended, he returned to the same activity. In 2010, at this time Ferran was working with a person specialized in antiquities, whose name was Jean-Michel Corvès, who bought the stolen items and sold them on the black market. Corvès gave Ferran a list of famous painters and asked him to steal their paintings. Ferran decided to target the Museum of Contemporary Art, which he thought was impenetrable due to its tight security. Its design was simple and strong, and it consisted of sections, each section containing a certain number of artistic paintings worth millions. And each section had more than one window, and each window was 10 meters high. This place never became a burglary because it was famous for its tight security guarding, and he knew that the Museum of Contemporary Art was inaccessible, never penetrate, and the means of protection that have the same banks. But when Ferran was observing the place, he saw men walking in the museum at night, but there was no alarm device. Then he discovered that the alarms were not working, and after several surveillances, Ferran learned that the guards had wandered around the museum twice, for one night, and between 2 times for a period of 2 times, which was 2.5 hours, and no one was there. He walked around the yard, and then Ferran decided to enter through the window because it was the only loophole. After he started stealing 5 plates worth 120 million euros, he wanted to take more, but he was afraid, so he got into the car and fled. After that, he went to his friend Corvès and they agreed that the value of each painting would be 50,000 euros, meaning that the total amount that Ferran would receive was 250,000 euros. So they asked Corvès to be patient with him for a few days and I will give him to you. Ferran got a little angry and then agreed. Then Ferran returned to his house and turned on the television and saw that the news of the theft of the paintings had spread throughout France. Here the police turned on the museum's surveillance cameras, but the shock was that the quality of the cameras was unable to recognize the face of the thief. They tried to find fingerprints or DNA, but to no avail. 5 days after the robbery, Ferran was waiting for the money from Corvès, as he was planning to get married and buy a boat to live the life of a sailor. When he met Corvez to get the money, he was surprised that the amount was only 40,000 euros, which was much less than he expected. Despite his anger, he decided to accept the amount and continue waiting for the rest. Ferran began to spend excessively and live a life of luxury, as he would go out to the finest restaurants in Paris and host beggars. One of these beggars was named Guillaume. Ferran was a reclusive person, but Guillaume became his friend and Ferran began to share his secrets with him. One time, Ferran was drunk and revealed to Guillaume that he had robbed the museum. Guillaume, who trusted his friend, did not tell anyone what he had heard. The case continued for several months without progress, and the police began to investigate the people involved in the previous robberies. They suspected Ferran because of his mysterious nature, and secretly monitored him by placing a tracking device on his car. During the surveillance, they discovered that Ferran was communicating with a man named Jonathan Byrne, who owned a luxury watch shop. They also discovered that Ferran was planning a new robbery. Ferran planned to buy a bow and arrow to carry out a robbery of the Pompidou Museum, an operation considered almost impossible. He intended to climb the buildings adjacent to the museum, use the bow to shoot an arrow with a rope to climb to the roof and then steal the paintings. But he first decided to carry out house robberies to obtain valuable artifacts. Ferran succeeded in robbing a wealthy man's house, but police agents were following him and arrested him after finding the stolen items in his car. Ferran confessed to robbing the house, and gave the police the name of Corvez as a suspect in the theft of the paintings from the museum. Corvez denied any involvement, but after Ferran was interrogated, it was revealed that Corvez had delivered the paintings to Jonathan Byrne, who confessed to destroying the paintings. At trial, Ferran was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but only served 5 before being released in 2022. Corvez and Jonathan were given longer prison terms, and Corvez's assets were confiscated. During his imprisonment, Ferran met a woman named Corinne Opio, who visited him regularly and became his partner after his release from prison. Ferran decided to stop stealing and pursue an honest life, working in a new profession. Here we have reached the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like and subscribe.